Oh, I'm sorry. She was awakened by an explosion. Really? Well, maybe she doesn't know that her fellow citizens in Russia are raping, maiming, torturing, castrating Ukrainians. Oh, she was awakened by an explosion. I'm sorry. Mark, you just hate the Russians. I am Russian, but I do hate them. Is Ukraine supposed to sit there and just be target practice for the Russians using Chinese and Iranian weaponry and so forth and so on? Or are they allowed to actually defend themselves? I've been very troubled by the fact that the weapons they receive come with all kinds of conditions, like you can't attack Russia. If they could attack Russia, this thing might be over by now. Well, he's got nukes. I got it. I know what he's got. And you can't buckle to blackmail, okay? You just can't do it. So Ukraine is now, little by little, taking little pricks out of Moscow. Go.
Russia's war in Ukraine is increasingly blowing up in Moscow. This Ukrainian drone attack Sunday night bringing Russia's war hundreds of miles away into the heart of its own capital, shocking citizens.
My friends and I rented an apartment to come here and unwind, and at some point we heard an explosion and it was like a wave. Everyone jumped.
Attacks like this in Moscow becoming increasingly common. Last week, another Ukrainian drone hit a Ministry of Defense building. A psychological blow for a population repeatedly told by Putin's state media they are winning the so-called special military operation.
I was asleep and woken up by an explosion.
Oh, I'm sorry. She was awakened by an explosion. Really? Well, maybe she doesn't know that her fellow citizens in Russia are raping, maiming, torturing, castrating Ukrainians. Oh, she was awakened by an explosion. I'm sorry. Mark, you just hate the Russians. I am Russian, but I do hate them. Go.
This weekend, Putin was keeping up the pretense everything is okay, celebrating Navy Day. But behind the scenes, his officials appear rattled by Ukraine's refusal to be beaten. Former President Dmitry Medvedev says if Ukraine's counteroffensive is successful, Russia will use its nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is dismissing the drone strikes in Moscow as an act of desperation. The defense minister calling them terrorist attacks. Reality, they've got Moscow's attention. Ukraine's president is hinting more of these strikes to come.
Good.
Ukraine is getting stronger. Gradually, the war is returning to the territory of Russia, to its symbolic centers and military bases. This is an inevitable, natural, and absolutely fair process.
Exactly.
Zelensky is stating what is becoming increasingly apparent. Ukraine is ramping up drone strikes inside Russia. In recent weeks, targets just over the border in areas vital to Russia's war effort have increased too. The impact even breaking through on Russia's state media. What is clear, Ukraine's fight on Russian soil is having effect. But can it really have an effect to sort of put political pain on Putin? That seems unlikely. You know, Ukraine...
Saying in his soap, then why are you covering it? Talks out of both sides of his mouth. Why are you covering it if it doesn't matter? After we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, FDR put together and had put together a small group of men, and they were told, just attack Tokyo. Drop some bombs on Tokyo so they know we can reach them. You know, it's a very famous raid that took place. They took one of our bombers and they had to make it very, very light. And they had to fly off ships, things that were not really done before. And they succeeded. It made itself to the airways over Japan. They did damage, some damage to Tokyo. They didn't have enough fuel to get back. They crash landed. Some of the men would survive. Some of the men escaped. Some of the men were captured and killed. Some came back to the United States. It was a raid on Tokyo. It got the attention of Tokyo. This has the attention of Russia.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.